Welcome, everybody. This week's Joy of Gratitude has been sponsored as a merit for Refuah Shlema, a complete recovery for Leah Tzipora Malka Bas Rezel. I want to start by sharing a story that appears in the book Aleinu L'Shabeach by Rabbi Yitzchak Zilberstein. It's a story related by a man called Rabbi Yaakov Orenstein, who was in the past, he's no longer alive, a rabbi and Rosh Hashiva in London. And he would regularly relate the following story to his students about his own personal rabbi and teacher, the Chabina Rav, Rabbi Dov Berish Wiedenfeld. Rabbi Wiedenfeld was the chief rabbi of a place called Shebin in Poland. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correct, Shebin. The Chabina Rav's picture, along with the Rebbes of Ger and Belz, had appeared in the Nazi newspaper Der Stürmer, and with captions underneath. And the caption underneath his particular photo was "the world's greatest Talmudist." So you can imagine what that would have been like, seeing one's picture in the Nazi newspaper. And realizing that he was therefore a target for elimination, he fled towards the end of 1939. He fled, crossing the communist border and entering Lvov. The communist authorities were carrying out their systemic erasure of religious life at the time. And this rabbi of Chebin, along with some of his family, unfortunately, the rest of his family could not get out of Poland and were murdered, but along with some of his family who had managed to cross the border, were then deported by the Russian authorities to Siberia, arriving in Sverdlovsk in Siberia in the late 1940s, in the late 1940. Over the next almost 6 years, he lived in terrible conditions with little food, minimal clothing, in freezing conditions, and having to do daily slave labor. At some point during the war, the Red Cross published a long list of Jews who were being held in Siberia and explained that there was a small window of opportunity to get some supplies to them. Rabbi Yaakov Orenstein, who's relating the story, he said, "As I was looking through this list, I came to a name, Wiedenfeld. I wasn't sure that this was my rabbi, as there were no other names or identifying comments, but just in case, I gathered together as best I could a package of food," which wouldn't have been an easy thing to do during the rationing of the war years. "So I could send this package of food to the person via the Red Cross." And I was thinking, if it's my teacher, if it's my rabbi, then wonderful. And if not, I haven't lost out. At least another Jew would get this food. A few years passed and the war was over. The Chabina Rav was able to leave Russia, and he arrived in the land of Israel in 1946. Rabbi Orenstein received a telegram the next day in London, and written in the telegram, in as few words as possible, because you had to pay per letter: "Today I arrived in Haifa. Thank you for the food you sent, Wiedenfeld." And whenever Rabbi Orenstein would repeat this story, his eyes would fill with tears. Can you imagine? His rabbi had arrived in Israel. He hadn't even settled down. He barely caught his breath. But the first thing he does after years of pain and suffering is not to put his feet up or relax. The first thing he does is to send a telegram to someone who years before sent him a food package. To have the presence of having that on his mind all those years, just waiting for the opportunity to say thank you. That's the first thing. Not letting his mind forget it. But there's another point that I get from this. And I want to tell you something about myself. You may or may not believe this. It happens to be true. I am a procrastinator. What that means is I leave things to the last minute. In fact, I often don't even get things done because I leave them so long that they then become irrelevant. In school, my teachers were always exasperated with me for giving my coursework in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month late. Why? Why am I like that? It could be that I'm lazy. It could be that I'm a perfectionist and therefore I'm weighed down by the terrifying thought that what I produce won't be perfect. And so I try and escape from it. It could be, yes, it could be that. But I'll tell you something else. When it's something that I love, when it's something that I really care about, when it's something that I'm really excited about, I don't procrastinate then. If I'm going on holiday, I won't sleep in, I won't delay going. I'll just make sure I'm ready on time with everything I need and go. If I'm going to be reading a good book that I really enjoy, I love reading, if I'm going to be reading a good book, I won't procrastinate. I'm not going to say, oh, do you know what? I'm not going to start reading the book yet, or I'll find something else, some way of escaping from it. No, I'll just get right into it. When it comes to thanking people, expressing our gratitude, do we procrastinate? Do we fulfill all our own needs first and only later, if we remember, do we say thank you? Or is it important enough to us to put everything aside to ensure that we express our thanks at the first possible opportunity? The best way to develop this zrizut, as it's called in Hebrew, this alacrity in gratitude, is to really love it. Love the way it feels. Love the way it elevates you. Love the way it changes the day and life of the person you said thank you to. Love that feeling that you're not alone, that you're part of a large group, you're part of a wider family of caring people who look after each other. So that is the mission for this week. Just a short message. If you have the opportunity to say thank you, whether it's in words or actions or gifts, don't leave it. Don't delay. Make sure that it's the first thing on your agenda. Make sure you love it enough and you care about it enough that there's no reason to push it off. There's no reason to escape from it, because why would you want to? I will see you all next week. Keep well.